Welcome back to a 7-day challenge of living entirely inside a VR headset with the Pimax Crystal Light. Today we're gonna look at how you can prevent scenarios like this, because you don't like to crash, right? In my last video we discussed some basics, hitting that configuration wall but also how to bypass it, and of course we had that massive, breathtaking wow factor during our first flight. But today we're breaking down day 3 and day 4, and honestly, day 3 was the exact moment the magic completely wore off, and I hit a massive, incredibly frustrating wall. In my normal flat screen setup, I both use my normal monitor but also my iPad, which is sitting close to me, for example for looking at flight charts. But in VR you're trapped behind a wall of plastic. Trying to read a complex airport diagram or wire down an unexpected routing change when you can't see your own hands turns an enjoyable flight into a stressful, chaotic mess. By the end of day 3, I was ready to throw in the towel. I realized the harsh truth. If I was going to survive this week, I couldn't just swap my monitors for VR lenses. I had to completely reinvent how I interacted with a cockpit. That brought me to day 4, the day of tactical restructuring. The first step to mastering a VR cockpit is ending your dependency on a desktop mouse or keyboard. If you have to peek through the nose gap of your headset every time you want to drop your flaps, the immersions break instantly. So I spent some hours on remapping my physical hardware layout, which made it a lot easier. So here's that physical life hack that saved the entire week. I simply reconfigured the joysticks, and for some buttons I simply added some kind of bumper stickers, right? Some raised bumper stickers which help me identifying those buttons. I do think that this is simply temporarily, because eventually you simply need to relearn how you can use your controls. It's just as driving your car, right? Initially you might want to look at where buttons are, but after a while you know how to deal with it and you do it automatically. And that's also the feeling I have with VR when using controllers. You simply need to retrain your brain to use these new controllers without really seeing them. So to back up and tackle the non-map switches, I brought in voice automation. So there are two tools available, VoiceAttack and SimVoice Copilot. VoiceAttack can be used also for the free version, but has a limitation of only 20 profiles. SimVoice Copilot, however, requires a subscription. I managed to get, a free trial edition, for a short time, and that allowed me to test both tools. Both tools allow you to use your voice to instruct what happens on the screen. So kind of send keystrokes to, for example, Flight Simulator to enable the autopilot or to drop the flaps. These kind of things. But of course, since I have access to both of them, let's have a look at both tools and then you can judge yourself. So this is VoiceAttack. I'm going to show it prior to showing it in Flight Simulator. So what you can do is, using this nice icon, you can define your profile. Keep in mind that in the free version, this is really limited. You only can create one profile with the maximum of 20 commands. And I kind of made it a little bit easy for me, because how you pronounce things is definitely something which you need to keep in mind. In some cases it's really hard because it doesn't recognize it. And if I edit this one, what you can see is that it has now added a key press. So if I say this, it will execute this, which is super nice. And you can do that for any command which you can't map on a button of your joystick. So you can easily use it within Flight Simulator 2024 without taking off the VR headset. And to showcase that it works, I'm gonna use one command, and what you can see is that it listens like here, AP. And here you can see it does work because I mapped, the zoom in tool to it. And you can see that it now recognize the AP. So this also should work in Flight Simulator 2024. Make sure that there are no other tools running which could capture those keys, because else it might not work in Flight Simulator, of course. So now it's time for the second demo, and that's SimVoice Copilot. Yes, I know I mentioned that I wasn't able to get a free version. That's correct, because there's no free version, only a subscription version, but the developer was so nice to provide me a trial version so I could have a look at it. This tool is using AI, and you can even download a local AI model which requires 2.3 gigabyte, and it's optional. It's not, I would say, required. And this tool allows you to map a lot of commands. As you can see, they provide already a list with all the commands which are there, and this saves you a lot of time configuring this, let's say, compared to the previous tool, VoiceAttack. Besides that, the configuration options are really easy. You can simply configure your, I would say, you can configure your microphone input, and then you can do some other things if you want to do. You can do the testing, and after that you have the ability to test the voice recognition. Well, let's have a look at that. Autopilot.
Voice recognition test passed.
Well, you heard it. It was happy with me, and this is how easy it is. Compared to the previous one where you really need to, let's say, pronounce it correctly, this one I do think does it work a little bit better. So I am, let's say, almost, let's say, considering to have this one as my voice command when using VR, because as you can see, there are so many commands available, which makes it super useful, right? Because I can now simply keep my headset on, my VR headset, and then simply use all these things and call it out. Probably the only thing which I need to, let's say, educate myself is, okay, hey, which available commands are here? So I remember that. In total, 61 commands are here. And as you can see, these are the things, and you are also able to add commands. So if you're missing things, simply add them here and then it works. So super nice solution from my perspective. But fixing physical touch only solves half the problem. What happens when you need access, for example, to flight menus or check complex maps blindly? This is where the midweek workflow turned into absolute science fiction. First, I thought, okay, how can I optimize those navigation panels? Although it's doable, there are some other options, such as flow from Parallel 42. However, the downside is that there's, I would say, a paid version only available for Flight Simulator 2024. So I decided to use the default menus within Flight Simulator, and I would say overall they work pretty fine, although sometimes you need to move that mouse, and that is, I would say, well, you need to get used to it. Next is solve the blind notebook problem. So here I need to warn you, because there are several tools. One of them is OpenKneeboard and the other one is FSKneeboard. However, the OpenKneeboard one is only supporting a limited amount of tablets, so be aware of that. For example, normal iPads or phones are not supported. FSKneeboard, however, does support it, but that one requires you to have a subscription. So that's something which you need to take into account when you want to use these tools. For navigation maps, if you want a brilliant 100% free open source setup, you can load the Little Navmap VR panel. This depends on Little Navmap. If you don't know how to use the utility, have a look at my channel, because I posted several videos about how that tool helps you plan your flight and then also use it in Flight Simulator 2024. It pulls your entire desktop flight planning, which you created using Little Navmap, into the VR panel, and this allows you to track your flight without removing your headset. But since I already have the Navicraft subscription, I also took the advantage of the Pimax Crystal Light's incredible pixel density. This is how it looks like when using it in Flight Simulator 2024 in combination with VR. You can see the diagrams and they're razor sharp. The nice thing is that I can, I would say, use everything. The downside is that I still need to use my mouse, right? So hopefully at one point the VR glasses will also allow you to control things with your hands. That would be really cool. By the way, if you're watching this and thinking about making the jump to VR yourself, I've got you covered. I've put a referral link and an exclusive discount code down in the description below to help you save some cash on the Pimax Crystal Light. It's a great way to grab a deal and support the channel at the same time if you decide to take that plunge. Now the workflow is completely dialed in, let's give it a try using all the tools in one flight. I'm going to do a very short flight and I will demo all the tools which I use. And you can see how it works if you're using the Pimax Crystal Light in combination with the other tools. So as you can see, we're flying in a very nice area. This is one of the areas which has been updated as part of World Update number 22. It's one of those national parks. And the question for you is, which one is this? I would say it's in Utah, so I'll give you a hint. And you can see that I can switch on or off the autopilot. And switching it on again using the voice mode. You can't hear the voice mode, you're right, you can't hear what I'm saying using that SimVoice Copilot utility. But normally when you have it, it will also give you feedback if it did understand it and which command let it execute it. However, what I observed is that if you, for example, want to set the altitude, that it does not always set the correct altitude. I'm not sure what it is, but for example, when you say, hey, set my altitude to 10,000 feet, it doesn't do it very well. Besides this, there are of course a lot of nice tools which I already showcased to you, and that's why it's stuttering a bit, because Navigraph is kind of CPU heavy and that affects Flight Simulator performance heavily if you set the options, let's say, if you set the graphics settings too high. But as you can see, you can easily read the map, you can see the flight plan if you plan the flight. And the nice thing is that I can move around the tablet so I can have a closer look. And also you can pull it forward, right, more to you, or I would say move it a little bit further away from you, depending on what you prefer. And this allows you to easily read your maps while flying in VR without taking off the glasses. Of course, I'm still using my mouse to control that part because I can't hand control it. Unfortunately, hopefully that will come, I would say, somewhere in the future with the Pimax Crystal Light. There are some other headsets which do support it, based on my, I would say, research. But currently you need to do everything with your mouse, but I must say that is doable. It's not, I would say, idle, I know, but you can still use it to control the, I would say, peripherals within the aircraft itself, which I will also show you in a few minutes. As you can see, you can simply push the buttons in the Navigraph utility. There's also a notebook utility, as I showed you earlier in this video. But to be honest, handwriting with that is a little bit complex, especially if you're using a mouse. I was hoping that in this case Navigraph would have an option to kind of synchronize the settings or the writing from your iPad to the EFB, but that's not possible yet. Rest of the tools are working fine. I can zoom in and or out, and as you can see, if I zoom in very, I would say, much to the map, the text remains very clear, right? It's super sharp, and that's also what I mentioned already earlier in this video. The maps are super sharp, and I would say with moving your head, right, because of the sensor in the VR headset, in the Pimax Crystal Light, I can simply, would say, go closer by a certain display or move away or look another way. So that's super cool and super useful functionality. Besides that, of course, look at the surroundings here. I will go outside of the aircraft, I would say, at the end of this demo so you can see it. And here you can also see it, right? I can move it around. Whatever is, I would say, suitable for me. Closing it didn't work, but that had to do with some other keys which I pressed by accident, and that still remains, I would say, muscle training, or say likely brain training, right? I need to make sure that I don't press the wrong keys, and that is, between brackets, still a challenge if you're using some keyboard shortcuts. Now I moved on a little bit in this video, so this is the default map in the EFB, right? This is the free one which included in Flight Simulator 2024, and as you can see, I can also easily navigate using the mouse in this one. Again, also this one you can't control it yet with your hand, but I do think it will come very soon somewhere. I can zoom into the map, and also here you see that the let's say text is super sharp. I can zoom in and I can simply select this as arrival and then try to set it to the flight plan, which I already tell you will not succeed very good. So I will show you another way which also gives me the opportunity to showcase the, let's say, focusing, because you can see I can move around. I don't see the map, I don't see the route being set, so I need to find another way to do that. And of course there's another way, and that's doing it manually on the Garmin unit, which is in the G1000 from the Cessna 172. So let me do that. Alright, so let me try it once more. I won't succeed with this. But it still is fun to try out what is possible vs what's not possible. So you can see the Garmin unit still doesn't have the map, also not here. So let me say find another way how to do it. And here you can see what I can do, right? I can move really close by to the navigation display, and then it will automatically zoom into the display, which is super nice. And using the knobs, I still need to do it by hand. And by the way, my friends from Moldsar released a super nice tool, which you can now use to, let's say, manage the Garmin G1000. I didn't get my hands on it, but have a look at the website. If you love flying this aircraft using a Garmin unit, then have a look at the Moldsar tool. It would say it's not very cheap, but it looked very impressive, and several other simmers already did, I would say, a review of it, so have a look at it. As you can see, I can move the knobs here. I can put in the, let's say, characters. And this also goes very nice. Can move around things, and then once that is been done, I can of course use my voice to enable another autopilot mode, because I can enable the navigation mode. So let me first fix the, I would say, flight. Here it is, it's now set. I can say zoom out, and now I can switch to the navigation mode soon. So let me give it a try. It did work, right? And this is the outside, right? So this, if you look outside the aircraft, look at the shadow. So both inside the aircraft but also outside the aircraft, you can really enjoy flying with a VR headset. Inside the aircraft, managing the aircraft is still, say, a little bit training your brains and training your muscles to get used to the new method, because ideally you don't want to take off that VR headset, of course. But I do think that there are a lot of tools available which allow you to do that, which is super nice. Look at the scenery here, right? World update number 22. It brings so much new things. I would say I really love flying with VR. I tested, of course, without VR, but with VR, with the Pimax Crystal Light, it really brings next level. The headset is super comfortable. I had it on for, let's say, an extensive time, and it worked pretty well. And I would say initially I had some challenges, but that was due to the USB power on my PC, but luckily I fixed that by moving some USB devices. So there's also a tip for you: make sure that you've got enough USB power. So once you bridge the gap between physical muscle memory, spatial chart layouts and voice integration, you stop fighting the technology. You aren't just a guy wearing a headset at a desk anymore. You are a pilot executing an optimized, deeply immersive digital workflow. By the end of day 4, the Pimax Crystal Light transformed from an isolated tech gimmick into an unparalleled flight deck tool. So you might ask, okay, now everything is set up, what will you do on day 5, 6 and 7? Of course, I will do different flights, for example using helicopters, gliders, but also maybe airliners, and I will record them as I do the flights, and you will find them in our last episode, which I will post really soon, so keep an eye on my channel.